saw him, and his eyes has colors of my son's eyes. I saw my son. I saw my son on the ground, dying. Nobody, a mother, nobody should see that.
A 17-year-old boy knocked on a stranger's door at 5 in the morning in Inkster, Michigan, and said he had been shot. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. A few houses away, police found a 15-year-old dead in a backyard on the same block. Within days, those two deaths would pull a 19-year-old rapper from Inkster into a chain of events that ended in a search warrant, a police chase, and another death. The 17-year-old who knocked on that door was the rapper's younger brother. The rapper was Fornic, and over the next 6 days, the story around him became far more serious than music. Fornic, also known as Fortnic or Doo-Wop-Nick, was a 19-year-old rapper from Inkster who had recently graduated high school and said he still had plans beyond rap.
That shit different, like it's really the same. Inkster, shit go down in Inkster for real, like, shit go down in the city too, but ain't like Inkster. Ain't like the crib, I ain't gonna lie.
Why you say that? Why do you feel like so much should be going on in Inkster then?
Cause, bro, it's so fucking small. Everybody know each other out there, like, we all one for real, but no.
By early 2026, he had started turning that reality into music. He had been rapping for less than a year when things started accelerating. He signed to Rebel Music, got connected to the 24 Cash Gang, and released Belt Boys just days before the Penn Street shooting. Everything was moving forward. Then, over 6 days in April 2026, it stopped.
I got signed, I'm signed to Rebel Music, you know, shout out to my nigga Chaz. We getting it in, bro.
That interview was released 4 weeks before the search warrant was issued. The music video was released 9 days before his brother was killed. Everything was moving forward. And then, over 6 days in April 2026, it stopped. Before the events of April can be understood, the events of January have to be told, because the violence that shaped the 6 days in April had roots in something that happened 3 months earlier to his family. On January 3rd, 2026, Sierra Fisher, Fornic's mother, was shot 4 times after more than 100 rounds were fired into her home in Inkster. She said she was trying to protect her young daughter when it happened. Both survived, but the attack permanently changed the family's situation. Think about what that night looked like from inside the house. Sierra Fisher was asleep with her 7-year-old daughter when the shooting started. Over 100 rounds were fired into the structure, not 1 or 2 shots, but a sustained, coordinated attack designed to make sure nobody inside survived. Her daughter ran toward the noise out of panic, toward the part of the house where most of the bullets were entering. Sierra did not run from her. She ran after her and put her own body between her child and the gunfire. She was shot 4 times, jaw, shoulder, arm, while doing it. That is not someone caught in crossfire. That is a mother making the most deliberate decision of her life in the middle of chaos and paying for it with her own blood. Both survived, but the home was gone as a safe space from that moment forward, and the family living inside it was now operating in the open. Sierra later described putting herself between her daughter and the gunfire. It was the kind of event that turns a home into a crime scene and leaves a family trying to recover long before the next violence arrives. She created a GoFundMe to try and relocate her family and cover her medical costs. In it, she wrote plainly about what happened: the bullets tearing through the walls of the place that was supposed to keep them safe, the terror of that morning, and the reality of trying to rebuild a life for 5 children after their home had been turned into a crime scene. Community speculation tied the shooting to something Fornic had allegedly done, shooting up another person's home, but that remains unverified in official records. What is documented is what happened to her mother, in her own words. At approximately 4:50 in the morning on Sunday, April 12, 2026, Inkster Police Department responded to the 26,000 block of Penn Street after receiving a call about a gunshot victim seeking help. officers found a 17-year-old male who had been shot. Life-saving measures were attempted, but he was pronounced dead at the hospital. A canvass of the area with Michigan State Police assistance turned up a blood trail leading to a nearby backyard where officers found a 15-year-old male deceased at the scene. A firearm was recovered. 2 teenagers were dead before 6 in the morning in a residential neighborhood in Inkster, and nobody had been arrested.
Yeah, this is a bizarre story. It's also very sad. A lot of unanswered questions, but let's talk about what we know. And I want you to look at some video that we actually got from one of the neighbors. So it started all at about 10 to 5 on Penn Street. There's multiple locations though. Penn Street and then one street over, it's Kitch Street. That's where this video is from. So police say that there were 2 teenagers shot, one 15 years old, one 17 years old, both deceased. One was located on the front porch of a home, but that home had nothing to do with the shooting. And then the other victim was located in a backyard behind that house. Police trying to figure out exactly what led up to this, but what's interesting is that they're telling the media that no one is at danger. No one's in danger right now. No one's at risk. There's no risk to any public, but they're not saying anything about suspects. So did these 2 people shoot at each other? That's a question we've asked police.
The 17-year-old was Z. Willie, known online as Z. Willie, and he was Fornic's younger brother. The 15-year-old was known in the community as Loss, a close affiliate. Z. Willie had knocked on a door and told the man inside he had been shot before lying down on the porch and dying there. The man who opened that door and sent him away described looking at a dying teenager and seeing the eyes of his own son.
I was like sitting there, and then somebody just beep, beep, beep on my door. I said, "No, you can't come in here, man," you know. And I've been shot. I said, "You've been shot." So then my girl called the 911 and told them that he had been shot.
We're praying for the families. We're praying for the young kids that, lost their lives. I'm praying that we could do better for our youth. We need to do better for these kids. We just lost a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old. We don't know why, but it's gun violence. Something's got to give.
That sense of shock was immediate. 2 teenagers were dead, police were not naming suspects or motive, and community social media quickly filled the vacuum with competing theories about what had happened. None of those claims had been verified by official sources. One rumor that spread quickly came from someone identifying themselves as Loss's brother, who claimed Z. Willie had set Loss up. That account was not confirmed by any official source, but it did shape how many people in the community understood the case in the days that followed. That framing, if accurate, reframes everything about the Penn Street scene. It would mean the 2 teenagers found dead that morning did not die because of an outside attack on both of them. It would mean one of them went there believing he was meeting someone he trusted, and that person had set a trap. It would mean Z. Willie and Loss died at the same location, possibly at the same time, as a result of a plan that one of them had set in motion. Whether that account is accurate is unknown. Inkster Police and Michigan State Police have not confirmed it in any public statement, but it is the version of events that spread fastest in the community, and it is the version that,
if true, would help explain why the official investigation moved quickly enough to execute a search warrant against Fornic 6 days later. The case was not staying cold. As of April 22, 2026, the official investigation still had not publicly explained who killed Zwilly and Loss, or under what circumstances. Police confirmed only that 2 teenagers were dead, a firearm had been recovered, and they did not believe there was an ongoing public threat. Many people in the neighborhood clearly did not find that reassurance convincing. 6 days after the double homicide on Penn Street, Michigan State Police arrived at a home in Inkster to execute a search warrant connected to the investigation. The warrant was tied to the homicide probe and to other narcotics and trafficking-related activity in the area. As the emergency support team and troopers were preparing to enter the house, a 19-year-old male, identified across community sources as Fornic, came out of the house with a female passenger, got into an SUV, and drove away.
Summary of what occurred here is members of our emergency support team and our special investigation section detectives were getting ready to execute a search warrant here in Inkster on a home that was a target of several homicide investigations, as well as some other narcotics and other trafficking that was in that area. As the ES team and troopers were getting ready to go into the house, a male exited the house, got into an SUV that had a female passenger, started to drive away from the home. The driver drove down Parkwood. As the troopers approached and tried to do a traffic stop, the suspect fled. As the suspect fled eastbound, they ran the red light here at Oakwood and Parkwood and ended up striking another vehicle that was going in a unknown direction. We're trying to kind of narrow that part of it down there of where they were heading. The suspect got out of the vehicle, leaving the female passenger behind who had injuries from the traffic crash. As he ran from there, shots were fired. The suspect went down. Troopers rendered first aid to the suspect. 2 handguns were located on the suspect during the time of the shooting. Right now, the individual that was in the car that was struck during the traffic crash has been pronounced dead on the scene from their injuries. We're currently trying to find their next of kin, so I won't be able to give you an age.
The other driver was killed in the crash. A female passenger in the suspect vehicle was also injured. The suspect, identified in community accounts as Fornic, was shot in the lower leg and hospitalized in stable condition. The trooper-involved shooting was referred to the Michigan Attorney General's office for review, which is standard procedure. The 2 troopers involved were placed on administrative leave per policy. Body camera footage was confirmed to exist and would be reviewed as part of the investigation. MSP Lieutenant Shaw was asked directly whether the suspect was believed to be involved in the double homicide. "We're going to find out pretty shortly," he said. The connection between the warrant and the April 12th murders was confirmed. It was one of the investigations they were working on, among others. Before the search warrant, the crash, and the trooper shooting, Sierra Fisher had posted a prayer on Facebook for her children. After everything that had already happened to her family, the post now reads like a mother trying to protect children she knew were still in danger.
Crying out and lifting up my adult children and grandchildren. I'm standing before the courts of heaven. God, you loaned them to me, and I declare and decree that no weapon formed against them shall prosper. I cancel every assignment of the enemy that seeks to destroy them. I plead the blood of Jesus over them. They shall live, not die, and declare the works of the Lord in the land of the living. They shall be successful. They shall prosper. They will/shall receive favor in abundance. I boldly anticipate and declare it done. In the mighty name of Jesus, amen. I challenge all parents to repost. There is power in our prayers for our children and grandchildren. Amen.
She posted that prayer before troopers were about to execute a warrant at her home, before a chase would follow, and before another death would be added to the week. In hindsight, it reads like a mother trying to protect children she already knew were in danger. Inkster itself matters here. A small working-class city where poverty, street violence, and proximity keep pressure close to home. Much of what happened to Sierra Fisher's family reads less like an isolated collapse than like a concentrated version of the pressures already shaping life there. Inkster sits in Wayne County, Michigan, about 15 miles west of downtown Detroit. It covers roughly 4 square miles and has a population of approximately 25,000 people. In a city that small, where everyone is 15 minutes from everyone else, conflict does not stay contained. The people you have problems with are your neighbors. The people who might want to hurt you live a few blocks away. The investigations that start on one street end up touching houses on the next one over, because in a place this small, everything is connected, whether anyone intends it to be or not. That geography, that compressed proximity, is part of what made the chain of events between April 3rd and April 17th possible. The double homicide on Penn Street, the warrant executed 6 days later at a home connected to the investigation, the chase that covered less than a mile, all of it unfolded within a radius that most people could walk in 20 minutes. What makes the story so hard to absorb is how much happened within 6 days. Z. Willie was killed, the investigation widened, a warrant was executed, a chase followed, an innocent driver died, and Fornic ended up shot and hospitalized. For one family, the entire situation collapsed almost all at once. The titles "Posted This" on IG framing reflects a community belief that Fornic's public visibility through music, interviews, and social media may have contributed to the danger around him and his family. No official investigation had established that any specific post directly triggered the shootings. Fornic had been rapping for less than a year, had recently graduated from high school, and had visible momentum in the music industry. By April 17, 2026, he was in a hospital bed with a bullet in his leg and an open homicide investigation surrounding his name. As of April 22, 2026, no arrests had been announced in the Penn Street double homicide, and the investigation remained active. The trooper-involved shooting was also under review.
As of the latest reporting, Fornic had not been publicly charged in the Penn Street killings. But the warrant, the chase, the crash, and the open homicide probe had already pushed his situation far beyond the music momentum he had been building only days earlier. The innocent driver who died at Middlebelt and Parkwood on April 17th deserves more space in this story than they have received. Michigan State Police confirmed at the press conference that this person was a lone occupant, that they were simply driving through an intersection at 2:45 in the afternoon, and that they were pronounced dead at the scene from injuries sustained in the crash. At 2:45 in the afternoon, an ordinary driver entered an intersection in Inkster, Michigan. There was no warning, no signal that anything was about to go wrong. It was the kind of moment that happens thousands of times a day. Routine, forgettable, almost invisible. A person moving through space, following the same patterns that make up daily life. And then, in a matter of seconds, that routine was shattered. The crash happened fast, too fast for reaction, too fast for understanding. Metal collided, momentum carried through, and just like that, a life was cut off mid-motion. They were pronounced dead at the scene from injuries sustained in the crash. What makes this moment so difficult to sit with is not just the impact itself, but the absence of context around it. This was not someone involved in the violence that led up to this event, not someone being pursued, not someone making a risky decision, not someone caught in a conflict, just a person who happened to be at a specific intersection at a specific time. And that randomness creates a kind of discomfort that most people instinctively try to resolve. Because when something like this happens without reason, it challenges the idea that outcomes are tied to actions, that consequences follow logic. There's also a quiet erasure that happens in moments like these. The person is reduced to a single line in a report, a lone occupant, a vehicle, a time of death. Their identity dissolves into the mechanics of the event. No mention of where they were coming from, where they were going, who might have been waiting for them to arrive. The story does not follow them. It moves past them. And yet, for the people connected to that life, time does not move forward in the same way. It fractures. It stops at 2:45. If you slow down and really think about it, the weight of this moment comes from how easily it could have been anyone. There's nothing unique about driving through an intersection in the middle of the day. It is one of the most common, predictable actions in modern life, and that is what makes it unsettling, because it reveals how much of our safety is built on assumptions, that others will follow the rules, that systems will hold, that randomness will not reach us. But in this case, someone else made a decision in a completely different context, under completely different pressures, a decision to run, to ignore a red light, to prioritize escape over control. And that decision traveled outwards, crossing paths with someone who had no part in it. Two separate realities collided, and only one of them knew the risk existed. When we hear about cases like this, there's a tendency to focus on the central figures, the suspects, the investigations, the escalation of events. But moments like this shift the perspective. They remind us that the consequences of those decisions extend far beyond the people directly involved. They reach into the lives of strangers, people who exist entirely outside the narrative until they're suddenly pulled into it.
And what lingers after you've understood the sequence, after you've traced the cause and effect as far back as it goes, is the realization that speed erases meaning in the moment. There is no time for intention to matter, no space for reflection to intervene. Everything that could have been considered, reconsidered, or stopped simply doesn't exist in that fraction of time. It collapses into instinct, into motion, into consequence. That single moment at the intersection doesn't just divide before and after for one life, it creates multiple timelines at once. For the person who died, time ends there, permanently fixed at 2:45. For the people who knew them, time continues, but it no longer moves in a straight line. It loops back to that moment, replays it, tries to slow it down, tries to find something, anything that could have changed the outcome. But there is nothing to find. That's what makes it so difficult to accept. And beyond that immediate circle, life keeps moving almost unaffected. Cars continue to pass through intersections. Lights change from red to green. People check their phones, run errands, follow routines. The world does not mark the moment in any visible way. There is no signal that says something irreversible just happened here, which creates a strange disconnect. Something absolute has occurred, but everything around it remains ordinary. That contrast is what gives the moment its weight, not just the loss itself, but the indifference of time and environment to that loss. It forces you to confront a reality most people try not to think about, that life is not structured around fairness or timing, and that critical events don't arrive with warning or preparation. They arrive as interruptions, sudden, total, and final. And once that interruption happens, there is no transition back, no gradual return to normal. The after doesn't resemble the before in any meaningful way, even if everything on the surface looks the same. Because now there is a point in time that cannot be undone, only remembered, a fixed coordinate that everything else begins to orbit around. That's why moments like this don't just end something, they redefine everything that comes after.
Because moments like this don't just create loss, they create a vacuum of meaning, and humans are extremely uncomfortable with that vacuum. So we start filling it. People begin asking questions that sound logical on the surface. Why did this happen? Who is responsible? What could have been done differently? But underneath those questions is something deeper, a need to believe that this wasn't random, that there was a chain of decisions, a pattern, a warning sign that if recognized early enough could have prevented the outcome. Because if it was preventable, then it's controllable. And if it's controllable, then maybe it won't happen to us. That's why narratives form so quickly in situations like this. Not necessarily because people are trying to distort the truth, but because they are trying to stabilize it, to turn something chaotic into something structured, a sequence with causes, motives, and consequences that make sense. But the reality is, not every event fits into a clean narrative. In this case, there is a broader story: violence, escalation, decisions made under pressure, a chain of events building over days. But the person at that intersection exists completely outside that narrative. Their outcome is not the result of their own choices within that system. It's the result of intersecting with it at the wrong time. And that creates a contradiction most people don't know how to hold. Two things can be true at once. There is a cause, and it still feels random. That tension is what people try to resolve when they talk about these cases. Some lean entirely into cause, blaming decisions, tracing responsibility, building a linear explanation. Others lean into randomness, framing it as fate, bad luck, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the reality is, not every event fits into a clean narrative. In this case, there is a broader story: violence, escalation, decisions made under pressure, a chain of events building over days. But the person at that intersection exists completely outside that narrative. Their outcome is not the result of their own choices within that system. It's the result of intersecting with it at the wrong time. And that creates a contradiction most people don't know how to hold. Two things can be true at once. There is a cause, and it still feels random. That tension is what people try to resolve when they talk about these cases.
Some lean entirely into cause, blaming decisions, tracing responsibility, building a linear explanation. Others lean into randomness, framing it as fate, bad luck, being in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the reality is, not every event fits into a clean narrative. In this case, there is a broader story: violence, escalation, decisions made under pressure, a chain of events building over days. But the person at that intersection exists completely outside that narrative. Their outcome is not the result of their own choices within that system. It's the result of intersecting with it at the wrong time. And what stays with you most here is not just the fact that it happened, but how quickly it happened. 1 second, everything is normal. The next, everything is gone. No transition, no warning, no time to process. Just a single point in time that separates before and after, permanently. Their name had not been publicly released in available reporting as of April 22nd. They had no connection to Fornic, to Penn Street, to the Warrant, or to anything that preceded the moment their car was struck. They drove into an intersection at the wrong moment because someone with 2 handguns and an open homicide investigation decided to run a red light rather than stop for troopers. That is the cost that falls entirely on people outside the situation, people who are simply living their day until someone else's choices end it. What stays with you most here? The 6-day chain of events, what happened to Sierra Fisher's family, or how fast Fornic's collapsed into something far more serious? Let me know in the comments, and the next video is on your screen right now.